and welcome to this week's Conversations with Marléne and Pascale. This week, I'm going to be talking about when love isn't enough in a neurodivergent relationship. But before we get into all of that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Pascale Lane. I am a therapeutic relationship and confidence coach, and I help women who are unhappily married to decide whether to stay in their relationship and fix it and improve it, or whether to leave and start a fresh new life for themselves. And particularly a particular theme that has been very prevalent in my work over the last few years is neurodivergent relationships and kind of navigating that path. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Marléne?
Hi, I'm Marléne Rose Shaw. I'm a therapist and coach and self-help author, and I help people with confidence and relationships, specifically with learning how to communicate your needs, to let go of the people-pleasing thing, set better boundaries, and just be your own true self and have much happier, more authentic relationships.
Excellent.
So Pascale, this is such an important topic, when love isn't enough in a neurodivergent relationship. Please do share with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge topic, one that could probably be broken down, and one I'm sure I'll come back to. I suppose the first thing to acknowledge, which we both acknowledged before we started recording, is that sometimes love isn't enough in any relationship. It doesn't have to be specifically neurodivergent. And neurodivergence is such a huge umbrella term anyway. I'm thinking about it more in terms of, and this theme has been a recurring theme. You know how sometimes you get waves of clients that all kind of present with the same kind of issue. It's funny, isn't it? You get a tidal wave of kind of the similar. And I think over the last 6 months, there's been a real thing around emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So overwhelmingly, and I'm just going to caveat before I kind of get into this, I am overwhelmingly, there is love in the relationship. Mm-hmm. I am not talking today about abusive relationships. I'm not talking about narcissistic relationships. I'm not talking about relationships where there's substance misuse or alcohol misuse, or although that does tend to be quite prevalent in neurodiverse relationships, to be honest with you. But I'm specifically steering away from abusive relationships. So this lack of emotional connection piece is really tricky, I think, to navigate, because a relationship can be very loving. There can be unconditional love, there can be loyalty, there can be stability, there can be so many strengths of a neurodivergent relationship. And yet what I see the most is that my clients in particular are really lacking that emotional connection. And that emotional connection looks like being at the forefront of somebody else's mind, being considered, being thought of, being touched, receiving affection, receiving love in the way that most, not all, but most women want to receive it. And I specifically say women, Marléne, because I work with women. I will work with couples. If their work is to fix the relationship, I will do couples work with them, but predominantly my client base is female. And I think overall that is a very foggy path to navigate, because it's like, on one hand you have the love, you have that loyalty and that commitment there, and many women would think on paper, well, what more do you want? What more do you want than that? But actually what women really want is to feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it gets difficult.
So there's something there about what love really means to them. Is that what you're saying? What love means, actually?
Yeah. I mean, you and I both love the childhood stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We know that our formative relationships, our relationships with our caregivers relationship helps us in our own relationships, how we view the world, how we view love, how we view communication, all that kind of stuff. So there are going to be nuances, but I think it's also about opening up your mind to two things. What actually is love? Like, what does it look like? And is it possible that my version of love is different to your version of love? It's different to their version of love. So we can be quite focused sometimes on what we think love is or what we think it should look like. But actually, there's a whole plethora of ways that love can show up differently. So that's the first part. And then I think the second part is having understanding and compassion to actually what your partner is actually capable of in terms of love. When I talk about neurodivergence, I suppose in my mind, I'm talking a lot about autistic spectrum disorder, ASD, ADHD, and more commonly than I think is considered AUDHD, which is both, which on its own is a complete minefield. So I think it's really important, if we are looking at those types of relationships, to actually be fair and balanced about what your partner is able to demonstrate. Not just like comfortably, and I say comfortably on purpose, because sometimes physical touch is very, very uncomfortable for a person on the autistic spectrum, but also like what comes really naturally to them. Like, it's okay to do something in the short term, but in order to make it a real habit, it's got to be something that comes quite naturally to you. So I think understanding that kind of helps you to see things through a different lens. And it helps you interpret that love differently.
Yeah, because I work with couples quite a lot, and I know that one of the things that comes up quite a lot about neurodivergence, and one thing that I find is very helpful for clients is for the person on the receiving end of love or not love, what they're perceiving as being loved or not loved, is understanding that, as you've just said, that their partner sometimes just can't do it. It's not that they're withholding it, or they're being mean, or they're being passive aggressive by not giving. They literally are incapable of giving love in the way that you want it.
Yeah.
And that can be very helpful to people to understand that, because it makes it less about them being a victim.
Yeah, not good enough, not worthy of it, and actually more just down to, yeah, exactly as you say, like they just can't do it.
Can I just ask you, Pascale, you're talking today about neurodivergence, and I'm wondering, are you specifically addressing people who are in this type of relationship who know that, who recognize that, who are familiar with this term, who know where they're at? Because I've worked with lots of people, and they may be a bit older and they've been together for decades, and it's only when they come to me or another therapist that they realize the differences. And I sometimes say, you know, one of you's a PC and the other one's a Mac, and you're trying to put a wire together and connect with each other, and you know, it's different, and that's, they find, you know, that but they haven't realized that for decades.
No, and I think that's an excellent point. Often, more often than not, I think the women particularly are tuned into it, and that's for one very obvious reason, and then a secondly quite obvious reason. So the most obvious reason is that they've got a child who has been diagnosed, and through the process of doing the diagnosis, this happens, I mean, I would say a lot. Through the process of doing that, they're like, ah, yes, I see where this has come from.
Yes.
Like, who am I filling out this questionnaire for? My child or my husband, you know? So that's kind of like a really obvious one. And the second one is that women just, you know, are very, I think because we are naturally caregivers, compassionate, affectionate, we just know something's not quite right. So maybe not to put a name on it or a label on it, but which is why I talk about emotional connection, because I think emotional connection, I know it's a broad term, but kind of encompasses the most frequent part that is missing. Now, like I said, every relationship is different. It's very difficult to sit here and give a really generalized view about a really generalized topic, but okay, so sorry about that. I lost power for a minute then. So trying to just pick up where we just left off. So thinking about that emotional connection, and I think that's why it's easier for people who maybe are unaware of the label to identify with that piece of the puzzle. It doesn't in any way, shape mean that the partner is definitely neurodivergent. There could just be lack of emotional connection, and that might be for completely different reasons. But within what I'm talking about today, the lack of emotional connection is the most prominent difficulty that these kinds of relationships experience, in my experience. Okay, I mean, this isn't academically tested. I'm just going on the years of working with women in this capacity. So I think before I wrap up, I think what is really helpful to consider, so just kind of like tying all of this together, Marléne, I think what's really helpful, when we were thinking at the beginning about, you know, like, what is love? What does it look like? What is our interpretation of love? I think as human beings, we're very good at, I say very good in kind of like air quotes, we're very good at seeing the negative. We're very good about talking about the negative. We're very good at thinking about it, overthinking about it, analysing it, talking about it, sharing it. And actually, if we can reframe that and have a think about what actually are the strengths in the relationship. Okay, fine. There might not be the level of spontaneous affection that you're after. There may not be the level of support around the house that you're after. Again, within the context. Now that might be enough. Somebody might say, well, if I haven't got affection and support in the home, I'm out. And that's your choice, and that's fair, to be honest with you. But I would also invite anybody that this is resonating with to actually consider, what are the strengths? What does your partner do well? I've been very sorry, I'm just very aware that I've been talking about him. Of course, this could be her. Absolutely could be her. I'm just talking about kind of, you know, my client base at the moment. So what do they do well? What do they give naturally? Yes, okay, there's going to be probably quite a few things that they don't do naturally, or that they are kind of, they just don't see. But what are the things that they are reliable for? You know, maybe, and I tell you what's really, really helpful actually in all relationships, and I think you are definitely on the same page as me with this, but I get most of the couples that I work with to do this, is work out your love language.
Absolutely.
Because actually understanding each other's love language, I think, is imperative to having a good relationship, because it may well be that physical touch probably is not going to be top of their list. It's going to be pretty much down the bottom, but it might be that acts of service is top, and actually that is their way of demonstrating love, by doing things for you. By, you know, my husband's great at, if ever he takes the car, which doesn't happen very often, but whenever he takes the car, it will usually always come back clean. Because I don't keep my car clean. It will usually always come back clean and with petrol. You know, and I really appreciate that. Not because I value having a clean car, because I actually don't. It's just not high up on my list. But I really appreciate that that's something that he always does, and that is his way of showing that he cares. It's a really trivial example, but it's just something that comes to mind. So what are the things? In what ways do they demonstrate love? And in what ways do you both communicate love to each other? Because actually, you know, the power and strength in any relationship is communication. And I think as long as you are able to communicate your joys, your strengths, your frustrations, your upset, as long as you can communicate that, you've got a really, really strong head start.
You just put me in mind of couples that I've worked with where the neurodivergent partner has said after a session or a few sessions, oh, good, now I know what I have to do.
Yeah.
Because the communication has happened within the couple session, that they're able to get that clarity, and there is this sense of, you know, confusion for the neurodivergent person who didn't know what this love thing was for the other person. But and it may not be coming from the heart. It may still be quite a practical thing, which is coming from the heart in a way, but it's not a kind of an emotionally driven thought. It's this is the do thing, not the be thing. This is what I have to do to let my partner know that she's loved or he's loved. So there's something about that communication, isn't there? Because if you can get that clarity of communication, it becomes more about, this is what needs to help our relationship and help me feel loved, rather than you always get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back, doesn't it, to what we were saying earlier about what we were modeled when we were younger. And if you are a neurodivergent, I'm just going to keep it simple, a neurodivergent male, the chances are your dad was probably neurodivergent too. And so what you have been modeled as a child growing up is probably very similar to what you're modeling now. Again, like big sweeping statement. I appreciate that, but would you agree that's usually how it goes?
Yeah, very much so. So actually, when you say when love isn't enough, are you really saying when the type of love that they offer you doesn't match with what you really, really need and define as love? then it's not enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Because for a lot of women, and I would say probably 50%, knowing that you are loved unconditionally isn't enough. Sadly, you know, it's they really do need more. They need, you know, they need to have a partner who is emotionally available, connected, tactile, thoughtful, one step ahead, involved. It's reeling it off the top of my head. And a lot of the time, that's not all of the time, not all of the time. And I've listed off a long list there of things that can be broken down into so many different layers, but sometimes those things can't be achieved. And then it is up to, you know, I've got two ladies that I'm working with at the moment who have been void of that feeling of being valued and seen and heard and supported, void of it for 20 years. You know, it's not uncommon. And so in those cases, stop torturing yourself. Like, be happy. You've only got one life in this skin this time around. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Make the most of it. But also, if it can be saved, then, and you can find your happiness, then I'm obviously all for that too. I don't have any bias on which way my work goes. Whether they stay or whether they go is not my business. My job is to make sure that they are as happy and fulfilled and thriving as possible.
And I would recommend anybody watching this who is in this situation and trying to make a decision and feeling unhappy, that they come and book some sessions in with you, Pascale, because you know your stuff and you can help them. So how can they get in contact with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is to DM me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my masterclass in the comments below, which is Should I Stay or Should I Go? It's not specifically for neurodivergent relationships, but it leans into it very much. So I will put that in the notes below. That explores what you're going through, what you may be feeling, myths, and coping strategies. And then at the end of the masterclass, if you want to sign up for a free call, you can. But if you don't want to watch the masterclass and you just want to jump into messaging me, just DM me.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much for today, Pascale. It's a very important topic. It's a very common issue that people have, a worry, challenge in their relationships that perhaps people aren't so aware of. And so it's really great that you've been here today talking about it. And let's come back and talk about it some more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Great to connect with you again, Pascale. And I'll see you next time.